So if everybody's ready to start, we'll start. Just for the record, everybody's here. 5 board members.
And you're our official,
I am your
Selectmen's
selectman rep, yep.
So all we have to accomplish right now at this time before the site walk is to elect chair and vice chair.
there's actually 3 things on the agenda as I posted it.
Okay.
Why don't we do that first?
So I make a motion that Paul Tremblay continue as chair?
Second,
No. I do not want to be the chair.
but I do.
I do not want to do it. But I do know of somebody else that would like to do it.
Oh,
No,
okay.
has agreed, unless,
With a caveat.
unless anyone else here would like to be chair. He's already said no. No, would you like to be chair? Okay, so someone needs to make the motion.
All right, I'll make a motion.
I got it.
Frank Frazier,
Thank you for the second
chair.
I'll
second
that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much, I appreciate it, but it's time for a change, I think.
Okay.
All right, so the motion carries it. Frank is the new chairman.
Okay, so then I'll take over, all right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I make a motion that Paul Tremblay be elected as vice chair, unless somebody else would.
Second.
I'm sorry, who seconded the
It
first
was
one?
unanimous.
Unanimous second.
Who seconded the first one?
I'll second.
Okay, and then who seconded this one?
I did.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, great, done. If you'll notice, we don't have an administrative assistant here tonight. I'm taking notes, and thanks to Ed, Mr. Comeau, recording it on GovernmentOversite.com. I'll use that to help do the minutes, so I'm going to do the minutes. So we have placed an advertisement on the website for an administrative assistant, and gotten near 0 bites. The planning board has been trying to find one for 9 months and have not found one yet, I don't think.
No, they have not.
Okay, so I would ask, unless there's an objection from the board, I would ask that if I do find someone who seems to be a good fit, that I'd be able to just go ahead and get that person a job. Or would you like to discuss it at a formal meeting?
I'm okay with that.
Is everybody kind of okay with that?
You're the stucky.
Yeah, okay, good. So I've tried a few people. You know, it's just a few hours a year. And
Oh.
it depending on the current pay scale set by the selectmen, it's 14 or 15 or 16 bucks an hour for maybe 20, 40 hours worth of work a year. So it's not a huge position. So maybe we can find somebody. All right. And then the third thing that was on the agenda that I believe I posted on the website, and that is we were working on new rules of procedures, and that's going to come into play at the hearing tonight. They're not ready for their next step. I have talked to the attorney on a couple of the issues on it, and I've got to get back to her on one. So my goal will be, before the end of this year, is we have at least one. We have to have. There's a whole procedure for adopting new rules of procedures. My goal is to call us together again for another meeting just on the rules of procedures. We can't talk about it tonight because we didn't post it, so we can't talk about it. But I'll call a meeting, and then you have to have a second meeting. If we like them, we still have to let them sit for 30 days in public view, and then we have to have another before we adopt them. But my goal is to have it like in, September-ish, October-ish, so we can get it done, and by the end of the year have new rules of procedure. So that's the status on that project. And I'm going to add, based on the work I did preparing for the hearing tonight, I'm going to add some more stuff to it because the first draft was lacking a little bit. So, and one more thing is, I think I have found that, and again, this is just informational, I think I found that the Brookfield current zoning ordinance is not up to date when it comes to our powers to grant variances. The wording in our zoning ordinance, and you'll see this at the hearing tonight, doesn't match the current RSA, which was updated in 2013. So I'm going to propose to the planning board that they correct that, and they do it from time to time. the laws are change, you've got to requote, you've got to update your zoning articles. If they don't want to do it, then I might suggest at one of our meetings that we do a petitioned warrant article getting ready for next March to change at least that one section. And so that's the only other thing I can think of. So we're going to have, the net of that is that I'll coordinate with you guys and we'll pick a date we can all get here, but we're probably going to have one or two more administrative meetings this year to work on rules of procedure and potentially work on suggested changes to the zoning. Specifically, it's Article 5, it's our powers and what we have to do and what we have to follow. There's something in there that's not the current, quotes the wrong RSA. It quotes the RSA, but it's not updated correctly. Okay? Any other business stuff?
Question.
Yeah.
Normally, in order to do this, we would have something from the planning board saying that they have denied her application.
Again, I don't want to talk about that issue until I will discuss that when we get to the public hearing, because I want everybody to discuss this. Very fair point, bring it up at the beginning. I'm going to plan to do a housekeeping section after the site visit, on the hearing, at the posted time. Then, so any topics about the thing we're going to do tonight need to happen at that, what do we say, 5:30, 6:30, when that hearing starts.
I have a question. So the site visit is not part of the public hearing?
Site visit is a separate entity.
Okay.
At the site visit, you can look at the property, you can ask questions pertinent to the topography of the thing, but we will not discuss the actual request for a variance at the site visit.
All right.
And I'll actually,
Okay.
if somebody starts asking those questions, I'll ask them, please do not.
Yeah.
Okay? So it's simply to,
Okay.
so that when we actually have the hearing, is that we all have seen the parcel and in the case of a lot of the stuff we do, I don't want to again talk about tonight's hearing, but it's a large part about granting variances is this thing going to have an effect on the neighborhood? Well, you need to see know the neighborhood.
But
to be
I
able to know
asked
whether
my
it's gonna-
question because his question would preclude all of it. If indeed we've skipped a step.
Okay, well, we haven't, but I'll answer that at the hearing.
He'll give us the data when we come
Yeah,
back.
I understand. Oh, no, I
Just let
understand
me-
your point.
just let you know.
Yes.
I have conferred with the town attorney and I will
Okay.
discuss that at the
Yeah,
hearing.
she gave
Okay.
us some guidance.
She gave us
Okay.
guidance and
All right.
we have followed her guidance,
Okay.
so we should be good.
All right,
But again,
okay.
let's wait. I'll go over that all
Yeah.
again
I
at the beginning of the
understand the
hearing, just
question
so it's
part
part
of
of the
the
public
site.
record of the hearing. This is a business meeting.
Yep.
Anything else? Somebody adjourn? Will adjourn?
No, you're gonna recess, not.
Yeah.
Recess.
right.
No, this was a separate business meeting,
Oh,
so it's done. So there's no reason to adjourn. What's your advice, Ed?
Isn't your posting say this meeting begins at 5:30?
No, it said there was business meeting at 5:30, a site visit at 6 o'clock, and a public hearing at 6:30.
You
It
should
was
get
for-
that.
I see them as three separate entities.
That's fine.
Yeah, it was for
Okay.
organization.
Yes. So,
okay, and that's
you
that.
okay with adjourning now?
I
This
am.
meeting, the business meeting.
I missed
Well, this
those
is still
three
work in order.
steps,
Pardon?
so
That
now
was
I get.
To select a chairman and a vice chairman. That's what this.
Yes,
Yes.
that's right.
And for me to give you some other little housekeeping information.
Okay.
Here, just to be safe, let me read the newspaper clipping. Notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held on Thursday, August 30th at 6:30 p.m. at the Brookfield Town Office Building located blah, 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 and talks about the hearing, and then it says, a site visit will be held by the ZBA will be held on Thursday, August 30th at 6 p.m. And the public notice didn't even mention this meeting. It was noticed on the website and on the posting, the bulletin board like it was supposed to be. So
Okay.
this was kind of a separate meeting,
Okay.
business meeting.
That's really what I needed.
Okay. And that's why, because
That makes
because
sense
the,
then.
the newspaper posting and the letters to the butter
Mhm.
were just about the hearing, and that's why I don't want to talk anything about
Right.
that
Okay,
until
good enough.
people who have the chance to be here when we said we were going to do it.
Yep.
So
Good.
we need to be up at Sue's in 15 minutes. We can take one or two. I don't think we all need to take separate cars. We'll take separate cars.
I'll ride along.
So we adjourned this meeting at 5:40. I will open the hearing. This hearing is been called for an application by Ms. Susan Zellick on to request a variance on her property. We're going to begin in a second. First, I'm going to do a little housekeeping. The number one is one of our members, now Vice Chairman, Mr. Paul Tremblay, has recused himself. That's why he's sitting in the audience, because he's an abutter to this project. So the ZBA, Brookfield ZBA does not have alternates, so it'll be the four of us here this evening, which constitutes a quorum under the RSA's and our rules of procedure. We are currently reworking our rules of procedure, but we have not formally adopted new ones, so for the purpose of this meeting, we're going to be going mostly by the old ones, which were adopted on February 26th of 2004. And as far as the actual conduction of the public hearing, that is what I'm going to use guidance for. However, for the meat of a variance hearing is to go through 5 questions, and we're going to hear a lot about the 5 questions tonight. And I'm going to rely on both the Brookfield zoning ordinance and on the RSAs, because the RSAs have actually changed. Our zoning ordinance isn't updated with the latest RSA. So I'm going to actually, for the purpose of the order of the 5 questions, I'm going to use the RSA, which is the most current, so that everything we do here tonight can pass muster. And just for general information and housekeeping, any decision by the ZBA can be appealed. It can be appealed by the applicant. It can be appealed by a member of the public. It can be appealed basically by anybody who wants to appeal it. So regardless of which way we find, yay or nay. So we're going to, we'll record everything. The ZBA currently doesn't have an administrative assistant. The position's open, if anybody would like to take that position. So I will be producing the minutes, but I'm going to rely on the video recording that's being made by GovernmentOversite.com for that. Again, keeping with the rules of procedure, this hearing was duly noticed on the town website and on the town bulletin board, which is required by common procedures for all boards in Brookfield. It was also noticed in the Granite State News on, I thought I wrote it down, August 16th, I believe, Thursday, so 2 weeks ago. So it meets the posting notice requirements. We also, the board conducted a visit of the site approximately half an hour ago. That was also noticed, and at least one abutter took advantage of being on the site visit. One of the potential issues before we actually start the hearing is, the question is, what is the basis of this application before us? There was no formal, the applicant actually went and chatted with the planning board, but the planning board actually never formally met or made a decision to deny it. They basically told her informally that she needed to go to the ZBA. So when we first got the application, I took it to the town attorney, and the town attorney assured us that unless our rules of procedure or our zoning ordinance says something differently, basically anybody can come to us and ask for a variance. They do not have to be seeking relief from a decision by someone else like the planning board. So this is the application is actually valid. We actually got the application, again, I thought I wrote this down. Where did I put that? The first application came to us on July 29th. However, it had some deficiencies according to the lawyer, so we asked the applicant to revise it. We got it back on August the 7th. So this hearing is being held within the required 30 days from August the 7th when we got the completed application. It's for map 18, lot 14, and what is it, 11, what's your address, 112 Clark Road, AKA. It is a request for a variance. It is not a special exception, and we can get into that why it is, but it's purely a request for a variance. And it's a variance from the Brookfield zoning building lot requirements, because the applicant is asking us for a variance to allow her to subdivide a current parcel into 2 parcels without enough required front footage. So it is a request for Article 2, a variance from Article 2, Section A, 3C, and I'm going to pass that a copy out to each of the, so there you have it in front of it in case you don't have your zoning ordinance out in front of you. There's a copy here for the public if they would like to see it. So that's the one we're going to be discussing. What else do I want to say about that? Which is a lot of record in town. It is a conforming lot, so that's why special exceptions don't apply here. Special exceptions apply when you've got a non-conforming lot or a non-conforming use. So those sections of our zoning code that apply to non-conforming use don't apply here because the current lot is a very acceptable conforming parcel with a residence on it. So and I'm going to let you talk in a second, Sue. The basic rules of procedure is applicant will make their pitch. The board members can ask questions at any time during that. After the applicant presents their case to us, I will then let abutters talk, and then other members of the public. We can have a little back and forth if that becomes necessary, but I ask you to, one, if you speak, to state your name, and if you live in Brookfield or not, and that you address questions to me, and then I'll redirect them out. That's the rules of procedure during that. So one other point of housekeeping is our zoning ordinance. So again, a variance, the way a variance works, and I'll just, the ground rules for doing a variance, is there are 5 questions, and there have been 5 questions for a long time in this state. And the board will discuss and vote on each of those 5 questions. And here is they're in our zoning ordinance. Here they are. You can take one copy and pass it on again. Copy for the public.
Excuse me, as I
If-
just writing.
Yeah, okay. If there's going to be one more handout in a second.
Okay.
And in order for as we vote, and I'll give these instructions again when we actually get to that point, I feel like a judge at a trial, is that in order, they're worded not like you're used to wording them, but the answer is if you vote yes, and I'm looking at the board now, if the board member votes yes, it means yes, you think the applicant should get a variance. If you vote no, it should no, you don't think we should get a variance. So regardless of the way they're worded, it's yes if you agree with the applicant, no if you do not agree. It takes at least 3 of us to vote yes for it to pass. If any of the 5 don't pass, then we will not issue the variance. However, even if let's say the first one doesn't pass, we're going to do all 5 tonight because that needs to become part of the public record so that if in case the applicant or someone else wants to appeal our decision, we have the position we've taken on all 5. Based on our rules of procedure and based on the tradition in Brookfield to date, we will do verbal votes. I'm going to record them. Some towns actually have a procedure where each board member actually writes it down and hands it in, so it's recorded forever. But our current rules of procedure, the 2004 version, and the way it's been always done in Brookfield is verbal votes. So that's how we're going to do it tonight. So preparing for this meeting, I did discover that the state has changed RSA 674-33, which is titled Powers of the Zoning Board of Adjustment, which gives you the 5 questions. So they've changed the order. They haven't changed the questions, but they've changed the order of the questions. And they've also expanded what is now the 5th question. They've given some additional guidance to it because there have been multiple court cases going to the Supreme Court of the state of New Hampshire. So we are going to use this order. And if you look at this, there's an A and a B, and it's the B's got 5 below it. Those are the 5 questions. And again, if someone in the audience wants to see it. So the questions are the same as they are in our zoning ordinance, except they've been reordered, and I'm going to do them in the order of the most current RSA so that we are, I've got a couple more if anybody wants to see them. Anyway, that's how we're going to conduct the meeting tonight. So, with that out of the way, any questions on any of that? Just on housekeeping? Okay? With any of that, Sue, why don't you present your case?
My name is Susan Zellick. I live at 112 Park Road here in Brookfield, and I've lived there now for 40 years. And if none of you are familiar, if you go on Park Road, I always tell people, look for the granite pillar with the old bicycle with the basket of flowers, because it's not officially spring in Brookfield when the bike goes out. I'd like to thank the board for allowing this hearing. I'm not here trying to circumvent or subjugate or change the current zoning regulations. I'm a firm believer in zoning. What I am asking for, and according to the state of New Hampshire is my legal right, is for a case-by-case consideration of a variance. And according to the state of New Hampshire, a variance is permission granted to use a specific piece of property in a more flexible manner than allowed by the ordinance. Currently, the town of Brookfield, the 3 major points of a subdivision are acreage, setbacks, and frontage. I have a little over 7.8 acres, ample setbacks, as you can see on the maps that I've handed out and from the site walk. What I am missing is frontage. And if you go back to the old original Brookfield master plan, one of the key things, and I think it's in the very first paragraph, was to preserve the rural agricultural feeling of the town of Brookfield. And a lot of our zoning laws that are in place now are to protect that. And the biggest concern back then was, because of the building craze that was going on, is that we were going to end up with house along every paved road in Brookfield. So the decision was made to do the 250 feet minimum 2-acre lot. You've walked the property with me. Yes, we have the acreage, yes, we have the setback. I am short on the frontage. But when you walked in, you noticed where the proposed house lot was going to be, or the position of the proposed house. It's very private, it's not close to the road. It, in my opinion, no way damages the appearance of Clark Road, the atmosphere of Clark Road, the value of other properties on Clark Road. It's on an existing road. There's going to be no added road maintenance costs. What the town is going to benefit from is another house with a barn and more tax income, with little or no impact to the town as far as cost. And I leave that up to you to decide, and to the audience, and we'll go from there. But I have gone through the paperwork, the volumes of paperwork that the state has out, and I've been through the simplex test, and I think there is a very good case to approve this subdivision because it keeps the rural atmosphere. It is in keeping with the property which was the original Clark Farm, which was hundreds of acres. When they subdivided those lots, they just followed stone walls. They didn't say, oh, we didn't worry about frontage or anything like that. And basically, what I'm trying to do is to follow a centuries-old tradition, and that is to give my daughter Jennifer a piece of land to build a house. She grew up here. She's currently living in Effingham, and she would love to move back to Brookfield. And that's my case.
I'm just going to add a couple things to it, just so everybody's clear here. If, in fact, we grant a variance to Sue this evening, she's still got to go through the planning board to do the full subdivision thing. So setbacks and slopes and wetlands, that's not our purview. That's the planning board's purview. So we're simply dealing with that one clause, the 250 feet. So we shouldn't be concerned about that. Whether or not in fact can be subdivided in two parcels based on other problems, that's not for discussion tonight. And I was going to make one. Sue in her application, which each of you have, and which I've probably seen, one of the comments from the town attorney is that we asked Sue that Sue had to be specific. We couldn't just say you could split it any old way. If in fact we issue a variance, we're going to have to be specific in that variance on some language on the splitting of her current frontage. You currently have 420 feet, and of course our zoning ordinance says 250, so you're 80 feet short. So how do you split it? So Sue has given us two proposals. That you didn't bring this part up, so I'm bringing it up for you. So you can talk if you want. So Sue has given us two possible proposals, and option one, I believe, and you need to correct me if I'm wrong, is your preferred proposal.
Right.
So her preferred proposal is to take 250 feet of frontage starting at the corner with the Tremblay property, which would be the kind of western sort of southwestern corner, to pass her existing driveway, and then the second parcel would be 170 feet of frontage that would include the current driveway to the pasture, right? Is that in?
Right, there's two driveways.
Okay, and that would go to the corner we saw down at the corner of the Federer property. The other option that Sue has given us today, and that's just a dead divide at 210, 210. Split it in half, and then if we were to grant that, she would have to then have a subdivision map that matched that did that. That's the other point is we're used to dealing with a licensed surveyor or soil scientist and bringing us this big plat and all that stuff. We don't have that yet because Sue hasn't done that yet. Again, checking with the town attorney, she was not required. Our rules and all of our stuff do not specifically require it, so she was not required to do that. But she will be if we go to the next step, we go to the planning board. So I think that's a key thing, is in our considerations when we get to that, is if we do wind up granting a variance here, we're going to have to discuss which of these two options because our decision is going to have to be very specific on that, so the planning board has that to work with. Okay? Any other points you want to make?
I don't think I got a chance to point it out when we were all standing at the bottom of my driveway. There was an orange line in the sand. That would be the 220 point right there.
Okay, fine. There's also, as it was, and again, we're not here to talk about subdivisions and driveways and stuff, but you're allowed to have, they could design a subdivision that had a shared driveway, that used that driveway for both houses if you want. So that's not our issue, but there are flexibilities within our zoning for that kind of stuff. Okay, so do you want to add anything else? There will probably be some opportunities. We can come back if that, because you get a chance to rebut anything if you would like to later on. So I'm going to ask, we have two abutters in the room that I'm aware of. Would the abutters like to say anything about this application or ask any questions?
Sure.
You need to state your
My
name.
name's Pamela Wheeler. I live across the street at 119 Clark Road with my husband. He meant to be here, but he was doing his COPD treatments and didn't feel comfortable coming. But thank you for letting me speak, zoning board, the residents. If I had a choice, the 210 rule would be better, or just one driveway. I'm concerned because there's a lot of traffic usage right in that corner. We all saw a lot of traffic coming as we were standing there. It's a high traffic sometimes, and with the 3 current driveways, it's already pretty, I don't know if that's what I can say or not. I'm sure there's another meeting I'm supposed to go for that, but
Nope.
thank you for listening. A lot of things that we've talked to in different boards is that there was rules for a reason, that, like she said, keep the integrity of the town. And I think that was part of the draw as we were growing older in our years to move into the town of Brookfield because of the country feel, and, you couldn't see all the houses everywhere, and that's kind of my concern, that maybe some rules are being adjusted. And another concern is 2 acres, 5 acres. A lot of the properties are 5+ on that road. That kind of is one of my concerns also. I put it in the survey also that I submitted when I was requested. But thank you for letting me speak. I know you fine folks have your decisions to make. I do have a question about the current property. Is there a residential agricultural business going on? Do you sell flowers and such?
It's a
Currently?
Yeah.
So there is a lot of traffic in those 3 driveways.
But
I do-
nobody comes to my house. I sell them in Brookfield.
Questions come to me.
Oh, okay,
and then I'll
I'm
correct them.
sorry.
but
I'm
let's keep it on
a little
track.
concerned
Yeah.
that, like I said, that same
Yeah.
statement, that there's already currently a lot of traffic. I think I've said everything. And the walk around answered the question I had about how much land was on that property, and thank you
Yeah.
for offering that, and even this packet says it. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other butters would like to speak? Any members of the public?
Yes,
Okay, you need to identify yourself, sir.
my name is Rich Zacher, live on Case Lane. I think the town voted for the 250 frontage, and it was clear that that's what they desired. I don't see where this application differentiates from all the other opportunities in town to take a lot and subdivide it where you may not hit the required frontage. And there's plenty of lots that would fall in that category. So I don't see what differentiates this as a special exception or to a variance when we have so many other opportunities to do the same thing in town with other people. So unless we're going to change our zoning and say that we don't require the 250, I think you have to say it's a no-go.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. Anyone else would like to speak? You want to add anything before we go into deliberation? Do you want anything else you'd like to add? Or
Well,
you get to rebut if you'd like to rebut either of those two.
I would like
terms.
to address Pam's concern.
Okay.
It's a hobby.
Can
I have thousands and thousands.
I speak back or no?
Yes, you can, sure.
Okay.
And I do 2 plant sales a year at a friend's house in Wolfbrook. She does big communal yard sale at her house, and that's where 80% of them are sold. Maybe 3 or 4 times a year, somebody will call and say, oh, can I come up? And I'll say, yeah, but it's usually just like 1 or 2 people. It's not like.
Can I speak back?
Sure.
Or I don't want to get into anything, but
Yeah.
lots of traffic. My husband is on disability, and yeah, he's concerned. But I don't want to tell you, don't do your business. We all have hobbies, but I'm
Well,
just,
they
like I
say-
said, I'm concerned about the traffic.
They
Thank
see
you.
probably 20 times more cars a day at the blueberry field than you'd ever see at my house. So,
And just for the matter of clarification and for the record, when you say traffic, you mean traffic in and out of that driveway or on the road itself?
Both, but that driveway,
Okay, fine.
yeah, so. it's-
And Sue was rebutting you, saying, I just wanted to make sure she was using the word traffic in an ambiguous way. I wanted to clarify what you meant. Okay? And you're saying no.
yeah, 4 cars come up my driveway other than mine, of course, a week, that's
Yeah.
something. It's been
Good.
jammed for a
I
while
think-
because she's storing things.
that is a little germane to the discussion. The board, do any board members have any questions they would like to ask?
I do. Just, have you given any consideration to one driveway for the two houses? It's allowed in Brookfield.
We could make that work, I mean,
Well, that's,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
need to talk.
And Ernie, anything else?
That was the question.
Okay, good.
I'm not sure I got an answer yet, but,
I don't think the zoning allows two dwellings on one lot.
but if the planning board
Okay,
approves,
guys, you're arguing a different point, so, no, the zoning does not allow two dwellings on one lot, but it does allow for shared driveways between two lots. That was Ernie's point. And, just one second, and Ernie, to complete that is, if we get to that point where we're going to issue, we can put restrictions on.
oh, I
So
understand.
we can throw
I understand.
a lot of restrictions on if we want to, and that, if that is a key point in one of the 5 questions, then that is a very valid one to potentially put restriction on a variance.
I just want to get it out before we went into.
And I see your hand.
No, that's fine.
We're doing the board.
No, I forgot my
Susan?
question. Should've wrote it
Even
down.
with a shared driveway, you still have to have 2 lots.
Right.
Yes.
And you
Yes.
still have to have frontage.
Again, let's.
Because you can't sell it down the road.
Again, let's,
Okay,
yeah, no.
I just
again-
want to make sure that this one shared driveway.
Again, let's
money
come back to
Yeah.
point 1.
Yeah.
We are being asked to grant a variance so the parcel can be divided into 2 parcels.
Correct.
Now,
Right.
we can, and there are a couple of situations in town where there is a shared driveway. So if we want to
Yeah.
put that restriction on for some, but there's nothing to prevent us from putting that restriction on the variance. But it still has to be 2 parcels
Correct.
before a second house
That
can
was
be
my
built.
point.
Okay? Mrs.
I
Lee?
have 2 questions. It was mentioned at the tour that the property to the right had a shared driveway. Is there 2 houses over there?
No,
Okay, so it
that
was just
n-
approved,
you-
it never
That was
happened.
not true.
Oh, I thought that's what I overheard.
No, that property to the right only has 1 driveway.
And then, okay.
We were talking, this shared driveway thing came up and part of the discussions got overlapped.
Well, no, something was said at the site. I didn't hear it all. That's okay. Is there a set rule on the property sizes in Brookfield?
Property, yes, a minimum of 2 acres.
Oh, okay.
For a house lot, a
Okay.
minimum of 2 acres. If it's not a house lot, it could be 10 square feet, but if that, for a house lot, it has to be a minimum of 2 acres.
Okay, and actually, I have one more question. When she said the barn on the new proposed subdivision, is that the current barn that's there, or is a new proposed barn?
Sue, do you want to answer that?
There'll be
New barn.
a new barn.
New barn.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
that
I'm just
old
curious.
barn will probably come down.
But again,
I know, that's a different.
that's the planning board
Thank you.
and,
I'm just
and
wondering-
eventually the building inspector, if it,
Correct.
when it gets to that point.
Thank you
That's not our concern today. Other than if there's a concern about usage, one of the 5 questions has to deal with usage. So the questions you've asked are all valid part of this discussion tonight.
Have any other properties on this road been subdivided and not met the 250?
I am going to go out on a limb. I have been in town 19 years. I have no knowledge of a similar variance being granted in Brookfield. There have been, and the property next door, the Fedrin property, there have been special exceptions given to allow someone to build a home on an existing parcel of record that dated back before zoning that had less than 250 feet. And I believe there have been a couple of others besides that one. So that parcel, and I go look it up really quick. So this is 100 and some odd acres. It was in a parcel, a lot of record. It had everything else, but it only has, again, 40, 50. It didn't have very many front feet, but it was a non-conforming lot. So because it was a lot of record that didn't have the front footage. So that fell under the non-conforming sections of our zoning, and the ZBA at the time, I was not part of it, I don't know if either of you guys were part of it then, granted a special exception, so one and only one house could be built on that 100 acres, because that's all they asked for, because they didn't have the front footage. So I believe that has happened several times in Brookfield, but I personally have, I could be wrong, but I personally have no knowledge in the last 19 years of a variance being granted that's like this one, okay? Because we're dealing with a lot of record, the current, Mrs. Zellick's current residence that is got plenty of acreage, it's got plenty of front footage, it's got plenty setbacks, it's conforming, okay? But we're being asked to allow her to go to the planning board and create a non-conforming lot. Okay? Do you want to, I'll take one more question. You didn't quite ask during question time, but I'll let you, since we're small here tonight. Would you like to ask a question?
You know what I mean?
Oh,
And you need
No,
to
no.
say your name, please.
Diane Smith.
Yes.
And I don't know if this is an appropriate question, and you will tell me if it is not.
Fine, I will.
I'm looking at the diagram for the desired subdivision, and I noticed that there's a shadow of a former road that is on the right-hand side, or the eastern side, and extends over to the adjoining property. And it occurred to me that if the applicant, so this is a question as to whether or not this is going to help the members of the zoning board of appeals make their decision as to whether or not any consideration has been given or an effort has been made to acquire some part of that parcel to allow for a full 500 foot of frontage that might even incorporate that former road or driveway.
Okay? I'll address it and I'll let you step in. But first off, that road I don't think exists anymore. That's an old logging road. That's not there anymore. Okay, it's got trees, got trees in it. Now, the second one is looking at the map going to the right, that's the parcel that doesn't have enough frontage already. So there's nothing to be gained there. There is a potential on the left-hand side, that parcel. However, one of the points that the applicant made in their application to us, you want to read it or I'll read it if I can find it, is pointed out that if we deny this variance today, that it will require her the expense of attempting to acquire more frontage on that side. But how do you actually say it? Denial of a subdivision as herein requested would then entail the purchase, if possible, of additional frontage on the western lot line to meet the zoning requirements of mean the relocation of an existing driveway that involve cutting down 80-year-old tree or 80 trees.
80 plus or minus year-old trees.
Okay. And removing a section of a centuries-old stone wall currently running parallel to Clark Road. And there's also an issue of ledge in that area that might further make the subdivision difficult on that side for whatever reason. So the applicant's already addressed that issue of potentially acquiring that if possible. Do you want to add anything?
Well, I just want to point out to her question that what you're looking at there is a survey that was done in 1979, and at that time, you could still, we used to cross-country ski and ride our horses on these trails, but since the house went on here, on the easterly side, those trails have been abandoned, and you need a machete to get through back there.
Thank you.
All right. Mrs. Ritter?
What you were just speaking of, number 3 on, I'm not sure what page it is. I don't know if she'd be able to take those stone walls down. There's, I don't know what the rules are. We bought our property in 2016, and that was one of the stiff agricultural rules, so I don't even know if that's a
It's
proposal.
because it's a scenic road.
Sue?
I don't know. So just, I mean, it's great to have that option, but I don't know if that is feasible. But
Okay, again, that
Thank you.
actually is not an issue for us.
Thank you.
Putting a driveway in is under the auspices of the code enforcement officer, And there's a whole driveway permit process that in our files, if anybody's interested. And I think there are some procedures for getting a request to open up a stone wall for the purpose of a driveway. I know because I did it on my property and I got permission to do it.
I'll have to
Just
get
do it
that
without asking
information.
permission, not a good thing.
I'll
Okay?
get that information.
Okay, and any other questions or comments or feedback on, just a second, Neil, Rose?
Rose Zacher, Kate's Lane. It's my understanding that there's another option for doing a subdivision that involves putting in a road instead of dividing frontage, so that there's another road to have frontage on.
Private
It's called,
It could be a
the
private road.
answer is yes, and I can quote that, I was prepared for that, actually. Where'd it go? The Article 323C, whatever it is, talks about a private road. Private road is defined in our zoning ordinance on page 43 of the zoning ordinance on Article 10, which is Article X, Article 10, definitions, section VV, Victor, Victor. The private road is defined, and I'll go read it, but I'm going to paraphrase it, as a private road not traveled by the public that services at least 3 lots. So if that option was available, and potentially it is, because there's 7 acres there, so there's potentially 3 2-acre lots there, that is an option, but that has nothing to do with the hearing tonight, really. The landowner has, there's always multiple options. The applicant is asking us for the variance from the front, so that's another option that might be pursued later. It really shouldn't come into our deliberations on this, because there are other ways to skin this cat. But yes, that is a possibility, but it would require the subdivision to 3 lots and entail expense, because roads are expensive.
You have to
So-
build the road to town standard and be accepted
Right.
prior to your first building permit.
Yes. So, but it's there. It is in possibility in the zoning. And Neil, sorry.
I'm sorry, Neil Rowe.
And you're not, are you a Brookfield resident or not?
Just a
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
On proposal 3, the addition of another 80 feet along the frontage, what is the depth requirement of that 80 feet? 1 foot, 5 feet, 10 feet?
200 feet.
Let's go back 200 feet. So
Yes.
she'd have to buy 80 by 200 feet deep to meet the requirements for...
I believe so. That's a planning board issue, but I believe that's the way I read this zoning. Because it says, it's really simple. It says, all lots shall have not less than 200 feet of frontage on a class 5 or approved road and a lot depth of not less than 200 feet. So I assume you'd have to carry the 200 feet all the way back for the entire 80 feet to match. It's good, very good point.
A considerable expense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a very good point. Okay, anybody else? Okay, so,
Well, I would like a little more clarification on what you just said.
okay.
I think what was being, not proposed, spoken about,
Discussed.
was to add here, I'm sorry, but
Yes,
I'm
we
looking
have-
at the map, to add the necessary frontage for 500 across here, correct?
Yes, that is a possibility. that
And
the
it
land-
has to be a certain depth, it can't be
Yes,
just a
it has to
triangle?
be, it has to be a certain depth, 200 feet, according to our zoning.
Purchased to be adjoined to the property?
The way I read it, but again, that's a planning board issue, but the way I read it, yes, it would have to be 200 feet deep for the entire 80 feet. Because our zoning is fairly clear on that point, I think. However, it really doesn't apply to what we're talking to
Well, no,
tonight.
I know, but I want to understand all points raised.
Okay,
So-
right. So, yeah, it is not up to us
Yeah.
to tell the landowner what to do. We can
Right.
we can basically tell the landowner what they can do or not do,
Right.
but this variance is before us tonight.
Well, not to
Okay.
mention that the abutter unit won't sell anything.
So, okay. Any, do you want to have a last word before we go into deliberations?
I've got a question.
Oh, one more, okay, good.
Sue, it's addressed to you. Some of the criteria we have to address here are diminution of value of adjoining properties and the spirit of the ordinance. Now, I noticed that you plan on putting a structure fairly close to the road.
It's, I think, did we measure that 90 feet back from the road?
Yeah, I thought we walked back to where you had staked out
Yeah.
a potential house site.
That's not exactly where the house is going, where she wants to put the house. What they were trying to figure was the angle of the sun to do with the dead of winter or something.
In consideration of a butters, part of the charm of Brookfield is low density of visible housing.
Right.
You know, you don't want houses right next to each other. Have you given consideration to putting the house much further back on the 5 acres so that it's essentially out of sight? That would solve, I think, some of the concerns of butters.
Well, right now, if you remember, there's a buffer of trees there, and then the opening for the driveway, so you're saying going even further back?
Further back, have you given consideration to that, so that there's less of a visual impact from the street? It doesn't look like there's houses close together. Have you considered that? In combination with one driveway?
That's gonna be a
I
lot.
asked for like 2 driveways. I was just,
Strap on that
Again,
snowboard.
that falls in the category of restrictions we could put on it if we decide that that's.
That's why I brought it up, if we could,
Yeah.
if there's a possibility of a restriction of that visual impact of how the
Yeah, I'm
house.
still concerned about this
Seems
whole, confused about this whole issue about 2 driveways and traffic. I have one vehicle, Jennifer has one vehicle. How many cars are in your driveway?
We're not talking about
So
my
we're
property,
really
we're
not-
talking
No,
about your
you're
property
saying about,
beyond.
No,
about
we're
traffic
not-
and cars, and
Thank you.
Okay, so I think it's clear, and if the board has any more questions on the topic, is we have a butter who feels traffic is an issue and the applicant feels it's not. I think it's fairly clear. Right? Okay?
Am I still allowed to speak?
Last word, and then we're
Okay,
going to go into deliberations.
The proposal the gentleman in the middle mentioned about the house a little bit set back, I wish my property was set back more. But, I mean, the good Lord wouldn't have showed it to me if it was farther back. But, that might help, but, I mean, I'm still concerned with,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, good,
yeah.
good. You guys get the last word. Oh, wait a minute, Mr. Zacher?
Yes, I would just like to say that the spirit of the ordinance says 250,
Yeah.
and I think the board should follow the spirit of the ordinance.
Okay, well, we're going to, that's one of the questions we're going to debate here in a few minutes. Okay, thank you. You guys get the last word.
I'd like to address the visual impact. Where I live currently, I'm in a historic district in Effingham, and my house is right on the road, and I hate that. So I would like to be further back from the road. That's one of the things that I've been looking for in another house. That's why I'm trying to get away from that house. I do not like that. I'm right on 153. So I appreciate having a buffer between a house and a road. I like my privacy. The house I used to live in here in Brookfield, I owned the house on the corner by my mother's house for 14 years, and then I owned another house down across from Moose Mountain Road for about 6 years, and that one was very private, and that's what I loved. So I don't have an issue putting it a little further back, but my concern is in the wintertime plowing. I have to take care of it myself. I'm on a fixed income, my mother's on a fixed income. You know, it becomes you get another winter like we had last winter, plowing is a nightmare. So, you know,
Okay.
that was my consideration.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Brown?
for purposes of disclosure, I haven't mentioned it, but I do live on Clark Road, and we have a lot of traffic.
Yeah.
But that traffic is people that work in Wolfboro or live in Maine, et cetera, and it's a shortcut.
Yeah.
We can't slow them down. We do have the police check it periodically per the selectman's request. But the majority of all the traffic is people passing through.
Yeah, I agree.
We actually talked about a speed bump near your driveway at one point in time, but that didn't go anywhere.
We have one. It's called the railroad track.
Yes, I agree.
Any other folks, before I close the discussion, would like to talk? Board members, have you gotten all your questions answered that you need? Okay, we're going to go into deliberations then. There is a potential during the deliberations, if appropriate, to ask another question of the abutter, but mainly this is the board doing the deliberations. Do you guys want any more time? We'd like a break before we start, or are we ready to go? Okay, good. Let's start with question number 1. I've got to keep up with my minute taking here. The variance will not be contrary to the public interest. Again, if you vote yes, you say, yes, we can grant this variance. If you vote no, it means no, we should, which means you think that this would be contrary to the public interest.
Just a clarification, which option are you talking about? The 170 or the 210? You've got two on the table.
We can, well, thank you, and I'll bring that up. If on any one of these 5 questions, if one of the board members feels we should specifically discuss the issue Mr. Zacher just raised, and that's the splitting it in the middle or splitting it in 2, that's fair game to talk about as we discuss the particular question involved. I'm looking over my shoulder here, and I'm going to be doing it for the rest of this meeting. I'm looking at the OEP handbook, Board of Adjustment, New Hampshire, the most recent version, which was November 2016. These are the guidelines to which you all have a copy of, and I hope you've read it at some point. But these are the guidelines to us as a zoning board on variances. So that this question, the variance, the public interest question, is really a question is there anything in this application that would be contrary to the public interest? The applicant does not have the burden of proof to prove that this would be a great thing for town. It would be us, the board, questioning based on feedback we've gotten here tonight, if we felt that this would not be in the public interest. So that's the way to look at this question. It's not that they have to prove that this is the greatest thing in the world. They just have to have a feeling of whether this is going to go against the public interest. Anything else I want to say? And this also includes, most of them include something to this effect. We'd have to determine that granting a variance would not alter the essential character of the neighborhood or threaten health, safety, or general welfare of the public. So that would be grounds for voting no on this question if you thought, in fact, granting this variance, regardless of whether it was the 210 or the 250-170 solution, would do any of that above and beyond what the current lay of the land on that road is. Does anybody want to jump in?
Well, I'll jump a little bit. I am concerned with this because we do have zoning for a reason. And though I have empathy for families especially, I think it's important to uphold those regulations.
It's actually the second question where we're going to be talking about that. So I think that in the spirit of one getting through this, but in fairness to the applicant, we limit our,
Well,
limit this discussion on this particular question to,
to the public interest.
yeah,
And
and-
that's what I'm saying. We have
Okay.
laws. That's the public
okay,
interest.
all right.
Well, I agree with you, Sue. I have tremendous empathy is a great word for the situation. I wish there were something more obvious, but I too believe in the integrity of the ordinances, and I guess in that case I would have to vote no to that public interest question.
We're going to vote in a second, but we're just discussing now.
Okay.
Ernie, would you like to add anything?
What I use when I read this, both A and B, or 1 and 2, is our
What are you
master
referring,
plan.
what are you referring to?
I'm referring to the town master plan,
Okay,
and retaining the agricultural flavor of the town with lots of room and stuff. So I don't see this as necessarily contrary to the public interest, because its impact would be minor. The traffic on the road is a different issue, but that isn't her traffic, it's just people passing through. So I don't see that it impinges on the town's master plan of continuing to be residential agricultural land.
okay. So you don't see it going against the public interest, is what I'm hearing you say, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, good. Any other discussion? Are we ready to vote on this question? Okay. Susan?
Say it again.
So, let me read it again. We are, no, it's fine. We
About what the yes and the
we
no.
don't do very many variances in Brookfield, so. This is question.
Yes, exactly.
This is question 1 of the
Yes.
5 questions, and is the variance will not be contrary to the public interest. So if you vote no, you believe it will be contrary to the public interest. If you vote yes, then you think that granting a variance will not be contrary to the public interest.
Thank you for that clarification.
Okay.
I'll vote no.
Okay, no? Ernie?
On that, yes.
Richard?
I would vote no.
Oh, now we have a problem.
Now we have a problem.
Because I am in the same camp with Ernie. I'm leaning to the yes side on this question. And since there's only 4 of us, we have the old even odd. But I'm going to vote yes. That still does not leave us with 3 yes votes. So this question fails. Okay? But I agree on this question, the public interest. I don't think this would necessarily diminish the public interest. All right? That's 1. Number 2 is spirit of the ordinance, and that would be the zoning ordinance. The spirit of the zoning ordinance is observed. So if you vote no on this one, you think that this granting a variance would not be in the spirit of the zoning ordinance. If you vote yes, then you feel that it is okay to issue a variance on this for this request because it would be within the spirit. And specifically, there are actually a couple examples given. If we feel that the spirit of the zoning ordinance, that the 250 feet was very important in the zoning, then saying yes to this you would not be in the spirit. You'd be out of the spirit. You'd be going against the spirit. If you felt that the 250 feet, and evidently these frontage problems come up a lot around the state, is in this case that the 250 feet would be to keep density down, and that because of the shape of the parcel or something about the parcel that it wouldn't hurt it. And that was, I think, the applicant's main point, that with the 7 acres and the way they're designing this, that it's not going to necessarily add a lot of more density to the neighborhood, that it still will be within the spirit of the zoning ordinance. Is that, do you want me to restate that, or does that make sense? That's the way to look at this one, but it's not the letter of the law of the zoning ordinance, it's the spirit of the zoning ordinance, although it has been mentioned here in this hearing, and I will repeat it because it was mentioned several times, that the 250 feet has always been a fairly noted important part of our zoning, and I think those comments have been made. So, okay, so that's that one. Comments? Discussion?
Yeah, again, if we were talking about 10 feet or 20 feet or something like that, I might be a little more receptive, but we're talking about an 80-foot deficiency, that's substantial. And I think that falls well outside of the spirit of the ordinance. And I feel that that's probably going to impact the neighbors. And that's my comment.
Okay. And Ernie?
I was just reading something under non-conforming lots,
That doesn't apply.
which doesn't apply, so I have to skip.
It doesn't apply, I just want to make this question, it doesn't apply other than if we were to grant a variance tonight, and we've already voted no on one question, so we're not going to do a variance, but if we were to grant a variance tonight, we'll be creating a non-conforming lot. Or two, depending on whether we do option one or option two.
Anyway, under Article 4A2, I'm going to quote part of it. The zoning board of adjustment may grant a special exemption to allow construction on the non-conforming lot without
Yes.
sufficient contiguous buildable area, setback, frontage requirement, or lot size, provided the special exemption will not adversely affect the character of the area in which the proposed use will be located.
Right, that is a special exception. That is exactly the article in which Chris Federer was allowed to build her house on the parcel next door, because she didn't have 250 feet of frontage, but she did have 150 acres, and they put the house way back in the middle. But that doesn't apply to tonight's situation, other than we're being asked to create one or two non-conforming lots.
Right.
Okay? And then that might apply if the planning board turns her down. She might have to come back to say, hey, I've got a non-conforming lot now, I need to build a house on it. So that's how that could come back to us. But that's how that section really doesn't apply to what we're doing tonight. Susan, any comment on this one? You kind of already made the comment a minute ago on this one. Any more discussion on whether we feel that granting a variance that the spirit of the zoning of our current zoning ordinance would be observed? Susan?
I think the spirit of the ordinance would not be observed.
So you're okay?
And I'd like to state the reason. And I do have empathy for what you're trying to do. This is killing me. I think that the closeness of the houses, once there are two houses on this, alters things greatly. And that is what is, in my mind, going against the spirit of the ordinance.
So I want to be clear, 'cause we need to be specific when we issue our written ruling. The closeness of the potentially two houses on the two resulting lots,
Right.
if a variance were granted.
Yeah.
Not the closeness to other neighbors, it's the potential.
Correct. I mean,
Okay, fine.
it's not 8 acres, right? It's 7 point something
Yes.
acres.
Yeah.
It can't be pushed way back. I mean, they're still going to be pretty close, no matter what. And especially with the desire for solar, which pulls it forward. So I got it.
Got it. All right, so your answer to this question is no.
Yes.
Correct.
So,
Okay, good.
I thought we
Yes,
moved
okay.
on.
Ernie?
I guess I've read into these regulations too much because, again, I'm looking to the 10-year, what we're looking for the town, and I think the spirit of the ordinance is observed. That's a yes.
And I'm sorry, your vote?
I said yes.
You said yes, sorry. I got distracted. Okay? Richard?
Again, I'm I'm in great angst about this, but I tend to agree with Sue's argument that just the proximity, possible proximity of the houses compacted, I have to vote no.
And I'm going to vote, again, with angst, I'm going to vote no also, because I think in many discussions over the years in town, the 250-foot rule is something that has attracted people to buy parcels in this town. So I think it's kind of baked in. And I'm not aware of any time where we've said, well, maybe there are the special exceptions for people that had lots of record before zoning so that they could do something with a lot they already own, but not creating one after the fact. So that question also is a no. Number 3, this is the interesting one to me. Substantial justice is done. Don't you love state RSAs? Substantial justice is done. And that is defined in the, it's not possible to set up rules that can measure or determine justice. Board members must determine each case individually. Perhaps the only guiding rule is that any loss to the individual that is not outweighed by a gain to the general public is an injustice. So the real question here is, if we were to vote no, is that an injustice to the applicant, but balanced with gains or losses to the general public? Let me finish reading that. The injustice must be capable of relief by granting a variance. So in other words, if it would be unjust or not, it'd have to be something that we could grant a variance that meets the other 4, and we've already said no to 2 of them, the other 4 questions. So a Board of Adjustments cannot alleviate an injustice by granting an illegal variance. So the point I think they're making here, and this again, there's several court cases cited, is that if the board felt that the person had been unjustly treated by the town and denied the ability to do something unjustly, we just grant them the variance to fix that injustice, even though the other 4 questions we might normally say no on those, we just say yes on all of them because we're trying to do the right thing. And that's what this question is attempting to get at. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So.
Good luck wording this one.
Yeah.
Oh, yes and no.
So. Yeah.
Jeez.
So. No. So any discussion on this one? I personally don't see justice or injustice. I'm neutral on this one, so I would be tempted to vote yes myself on this one, just because I don't see any way to say that there would be any injustice done.
And yet, in this one, I look at that as a legal question.
Yeah.
And a legal question is the town says 250 feet, therefore I'd have to say no.
Okay. All right. Well, hold on, let me catch up on my writing here. All right, any other discussion? Okay, Susan?
No.
No. Okay, Ernie?
No.
Richard?
No.
Again, I feel that it's not a case of justice or injustice, so I'm going to vote yes. But it did not pass. Okay, number 4. The values of the surrounding properties are not diminished.
Diminished.
And it looks like I cut it off. Hold on. Excuse me. Let me make sure I'm getting this right.
We're missing the rest of the clause.
Oh, the end is question number 5. So
Oh,
number
okay.
4, and if you look back at the other sheet I handed out, our actual zoning ordinance, the 5 questions is there. That was the old question number 2 in our zoning ordinance. No diminution, I'm not pronouncing it correctly, in value of surrounding properties would occur. So if you vote yes on this one, you say that this variance would not create any diminishing. If you vote no, you believe that granting this variance would diminish the property, the surrounding property values. So,
Can I vote neutral on this one? I know.
discussion, do we want to start a discussion on this one?
Yeah, it's a totally subjective question, actually.
I think that's an impossible question to answer tonight.
Again, I have to go back to having two dwellings relatively close to each other, kind of out of character with the rest of that neighborhood, probably, in my mind, does diminish the butters' values.
I'll give you a counter on that, depending on the house that is built, which we don't know yet. They could build $1 million house on it, and then all of a sudden, all the other property values is going to go up around it. So, and I'm not saying you have to build $1 million house, but so I think that is kind of unless there is some specific feature. And the one thing I didn't mention, and I don't think it'll change the outcome at all, but I'm saying how it applies here too, is that we can say yes on one or more of these questions if there's some specific feature of the parcel, of the land, that makes this parcel different than any other parcel around it or in town. If there's some feature on it that applies to this variance, let's say there's a great big, Madison boulder sitting there in the middle of the property or something like that. Something that would apply to this variance, we can cite that. But in my opinion, this parcel is no different than my parcel and most of the other parcels with less than 500 feet in the immediate neighborhood and around. So there is no, as a ZBA, we can hang our hat on some specific, there's a river running through it, or there's a cliff, an escarpment or whatever, and therefore we can grant the variance to allow the landowner to get value out of the land. But that is, I don't think that applies to this parcel, because it's a really nice, beautiful parcel the way it is, and there's nothing there that can really justify that. Ernie?
But if we said that they had to build a house, a couple hundred feet further back, they got plenty of space.
Yeah.
You wouldn't even see it from the road.
Right, so that would potentially...
So I would not see it having any impact on real estate value.
Okay, so the purpose of this question, that's a valid point. But if you felt that was a requirement, then that would be something that if we were to do a variance, which we're not going to do since we haven't got enough yes answers here, but we would write in as a restriction, potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, any more discussion on this one? Then I'm going to call Susan.
This is one of these double negatives again. No.
Ernie?
Yes.
Richard?
No.
Oh, come on.
I'm going to say no for the reasons stated in the closeness of the houses, and I think it would have potentially would have an impact with the character of the neighborhood. Okay, and just for the record, I am a neighbor, but not an abutter, but I am fairly close. I'm a little closer than Ernie, actually. Okay, number 5, and this is the one that has been in our current zoning. This one, excuse me, this one is the denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship to the applicant. That has been redefined in the RSA in September 22nd, 2013, to say literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance, meaning the zoning ordinance, the 250 feet, would result in an unnecessary hardship for, there's an A and B part to this. A is unnecessary hardship means that owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, that the owner could not extract fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance and the specific application to that particular parcel. So again, this is the one that deals with the special conditions of the property that distinguish it from all others, and that the proposed use is a reasonable one. The second part is that if the criteria in subparagraph A, which is the unnecessary hardship, reasonable use, that's called the reasonable part of that question, are not established, unnecessary hardship will be determined exist if and only if, owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, the property cannot be reasonably used in a strict conformance with the ordinance, and the variance is therefore necessary and able to allow the owner to get reasonable use out of it. So, I jumped ahead. This is the one that talks about the conditions of the property. So, this hardship, this is the unnecessary hardship of the 5 questions, has gone to court a lot of times, okay? And it is, the basic purpose of it is that when you own a parcel of land in the state of New Hampshire, there's a reasonable expectation on your part that you can use it for a reasonable use that's in conformance with the thing. I think that their proposed use, if we grant the variance and want them to have 2 house lots, the use is fine. It's in compliance. It's a residential. It meets all the other requirements of the zoning, setbacks, and everything else. So for that purpose, I think I would vote yes to that particular part of this A and B. But on the other flip side of the A and B, there's really no, as I said earlier, I don't feel there is any compelling feature of this property that would set it aside. So if we allowed a variance, it said that this variance would result in unnecessary hardship, that would open the door for anyone with less than 500 feet to come to us and ask for a variance. And that's setting a precedence. That's not putting an onus on the applicant, because we've already said no to the other questions, but yeah, I think that is consideration, because there's nothing specific about this particular piece of property that would something, again, as I think I used the term earlier, that we could hang a hat on, that would give us a rationale for granting a variance. That's my opinion. Susan, or anybody want to?
I agree with what you said, the last point.
Yeah.
On B,
Yeah.
Totally agree.
So I think use-wise, it passes. I would say yes on that, but I think I have to say no to the question, because it would, there's really nothing there that I can see that would result in a specific hardship. It's, again, we really like you, Sue, but that's why it makes being on this board is difficult. That would allow us under the terms of this grant. Ernie, do you want to any comments?
It used to be, and correct me, I'm probably wrong, that if the hardship was with the owner, that didn't count.
Pardon?
If the hardship was with the land, that counted. And as I look at this case, I see the hardship is with the land.
Could you explain that a little? Can you explain that a little bit more?
Please.
I want to just make sure it's clear here.
The neighbor doesn't have enough frontage to give her any, to sell any.
But there is potential on one side, but that's not our purview.
But that isn't, yeah, okay. But my point is, it appears that the land, such as it is all that she's ever going to have. But the hardship is with the land, because it can't be subdivided because we don't have sufficient frontage.
So,
Which is where this definition drives everybody crazy.
yeah, it does, but, the land is the land, and it was purchased, yeah,
Yes,
right.
that would,
And the zoning was in place, okay?
yeah.
Yeah, I didn't look at the age of her deed.
And I don't know if that's actually applicable to our discussions tonight.
Well, if it was purchased before we put this stuff in place, it's totally applicable.
All right, but,
Do you have a copy of the deed?
no, I don't have a copy.
I don't have a copy of the deed. But what year did you buy it?
78.
Oh, never mind.
Yeah, okay. And I was gonna say, there are sections of the zoning ordinance that deal with the non-conforming lots that were lots of record before zoning came into place. And that was not part of this application tonight, that was not presented to us.
Okay.
There are ways to address that, but that didn't come in.
Sitting here, I have such sympathy for Supreme Courts, because that's essentially what we are with the town Supreme Court, and it's a very difficult place to be, because you have to look people in the eye and say, I don't think this quite works. I guess that's my only comment. I totally agree with your soliloquy. I think pretty much nailed it. And I totally concur with what you said.
There used to be clauses in this about use and area, and there were all kinds of other conflicting definitions in this one. So evidently the legislature has tried to clean it up. Okay.
I'm not sure they've helped.
We ready to vote on this one? Okay, Susan?
I do not believe that this is going to result in unnecessary hardship. Now, what does that mean? Yes or no?
That means
It
that
means
means
no.
that it means no, because it means
No.
you do not feel we should grant a variance because of hardship.
Correct.
All these
Thank you.
double negatives.
Well, that's, I really want to make sure.
No, it's not.
I'm thinking this
Well,
really awesome.
I'm attempting to go through this
Yeah.
carefully so that everybody
I
understands
appreciate it.
what they're voting on and
Yes, I
how they're voting.
appreciate
Okay,
it.
Ernie?
Because
I'll still say yes, because I think the hardship is with the land,
Okay,
but it's
Okay.
academic at this point.
fine. Richard?
Again, I think a simple no.
Yeah, and I'm also, would you like to add anything more? Sorry, I cut you
No.
off. Okay, good.
And I've been
No.
here before.
Okay, so for the purpose of the record, of the 5 questions, they all did not pass. So we will not be issuing a variance on this property at this time. Always opportunity to come back and try again, and you have appeal rights that are spelled out in the zoning. I believe you have 30 days, and in fact, anybody in the audience that wants to appeal is going to appeal it, but specifically in this case, it would really be you. We have the board, and now this is a question for the board. We have 5 days to issue a written decision. I will write one up, and since our rules and procedures were before everybody was using email, would it be appropriate if I email it to you and get your approval that way?
Please do.
Before I issue it. It has to be issued, we need to send a certified letter to the applicant. We need to publish it in the newspaper, and we need to give copies to basically everybody in town, the selectmen, the town clerk, the assessor clerk, planning board, everything. So I will allow you guys 24 hours. I'll draft it in the next day or two, send it to you, so that I can conform. Today's Thursday, which means, I think it's business, is that 5 days business days? So I've effectively got Friday, Saturday, I need to get it done so I can get it in the paper next week. So it means I have to done by like Tuesday or something like that. So I'll try and do it in the next couple of days. And I will also publish draft minutes of the meetings we had this evening and put them in the book over here, and then we'll approve them the next time we have a meeting, since we meet irregularly. Okay?
Excellent.
All right, and again, I want to thank Ed for videotaping.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, absolutely.
I have 2 questions. Am I under the understanding that if they tore down the existing house, put a road in where the existing driveway is, without any subdivision, they could put 3 houses on that same square footage?
No, they would have to build what is called in our zoning ordinance a private road.
Right.
It would have to meet town specs,
That's
which
right.
is very expensive. And then they would have to subdivide it into 3 parcels. They'd have to go to the planning board and do a subdivision.
But that
for
would
3
be
parcels.
allowed.
Unless there's something else on the property that the planning board would object to, that is very allowable.
Okay.
Okay, it's just, there's an expense involved with
I
the
understand the
road.
expense.
Yeah,
Okay,
right.
My question was,
Yeah. And the-
if they wanted to go through the expense, there could be 3 houses on that property rather than the proposed 2.
I
And
believe.
the only
that-
thing that's different is that you'd have 1 non-conforming lot with 2, and you'd have the 420 feet, so you'd have plenty of frontage.
That
Because
is
you use
abs-
the existing road as frontage for the other 3 lots.
That's absolutely correct.
So you go in 1 lot deep, put a cul-de-sac, you
Yeah.
got
Yeah,
frontage,
yeah.
frontage, 1, 2, 3
Again,
houses.
that would be up to a certified land surveyor. They might put the driveway, the private road in the middle, along one side, who
Right,
knows?
right, right.
But yes, that is an
That's
option.
allowable.
Yeah.
Okay. My second question is what is the state rule when you have a 5-member board, when only 4 members are present, about asking the applicant if they prefer to wait for a 5-member board?
Oh, I don't know the answer to that one. Our zoning says that at least 3 of us have to be present for a quorum and we can hold the meeting. So,
Yeah,
but that's a separate question. I actually can't answer that question.
Did you
And that
use-
could be,
use state
that
rules
could be
today?
part, if in fact we erred on that one, that could be the basis for an appeal.
I don't think that that's a problem in that the regulation specifies that all you have to have is 3 people voting and voting yes.
Yeah. There are
We'll
rules.
never have another member because he's in a
the
body.
odds of getting 3 people out of 4 are a lot different than 3 people out of 5.
Absolutely. So if you discover there was an error made here this evening in that regard, that would be a basis for an appeal. Our rules of procedure, the one from 2004, do state that if an alternate was available, I would have been obligated to appoint that
Right.
alternate. We don't have any alternates.
Why?
Because nobody wants to take the job.
Oh.
We've tried.
I bet you
We've
do.
tried. In fact, all the residents of Brookfield here, if you would like to become an alternate on the planning board or on the conservation board, we need more people in the town. That's the problem with a small town. We need more participation. We can't get a person to take notes for $15 an hour.
Now, third question that just popped into my head, okay? You didn't like the proximity of the 2 houses in relationship to the surrounding houses. Right?
No, it was
The
the,
problem that was gonna cause.
it was the relationship of the 2 houses to each
To
other.
each other.
That's why I clarified that when we had the
That's right,
discussion.
To each other.
I attempted to clarify that when we had the
Well,
discussion.
we talked about moving the new house on the new lot further back to separate those 2.
Yeah, that was all I was talking about. You would not see the Federer property. You would not see your abutter on the other side.
Right. But you won't,
Anywhere you built on that land.
right, you won't see them where the house is now either. So,
Well, again, if you feel that,
well, I'm just asking.
and
for
I will attempt-
clarification.
yeah, I
That's
will
all.
attempt to, in the written decision, which has to be terse because it's got to fit in the newspaper, but in the minutes, clear that out. So that is, again, if you feel that we erred or made decisions based on bad information, those are all valid grounds for an appeal to our decision tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, we actually got past, do you want to,
I'd just like to thank the board.
okay,
I know it has been a agonizing meeting. You've never had to go through one of these before.
not the current board.
Not the current
Not
board
I.
anyway, but I thank you for your time
Yeah.
and I thank you for your input.
Yeah.
I do have one question. How is it that I can be, there's all these concerns about the houses being close together. I have no problem with you denying the subdivision. I
Yeah.
understand that.
We didn't deny a
Rules are
subdivision.
rules.
We did not deny a subdivision here. We denied a variance.
Right.
Okay, so,
Okay, rules are rules, but what concerns me is that I have been told by several officials in this town, members of the planning board, selectmen's representatives, this sort of thing, well, why don't you just do an AUD?
ADU.
Now, if you're concerned about density, how is it I can take my house, put up a 15-foot greenhouse as long as it's heated, and she can build off the end of that and have an auxiliary dwelling? Think about that.
Yeah. That's actually a zoning, that's a planning board question,
I
not
know it's a
not a
planning board
ZBA
question,
question.
but
But-
think about it,
and
you know,
the-
when we talk about
and-
density.
And my,
Well-
my short answer to you is, because it's allowed in our current zoning ordinance, and that's what we deal with.
Which
Well,
really goes back to what was stated very early in the meeting.
And
that
we're really
there are-
way
there may
beyond,
be a
I should
lot
stop
more
this meeting.
Yeah,
options
here
than is
shortly.
being presented.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I'm just
No, I'm
attempting
just-
to,
that just
Yeah.
I wanna make
baffles me.
sure that the applicant gets all the information he needs in case she wants to appeal. I wanna
Yeah.
make sure that she's properly informed. Do you have a point, Ms. Weaver?
I don't know, I just felt like I was just stabbed.
Huh?
I hope that I can come to a meeting and not be retaliated on. We bought our property as is, and I'm,
apologize.
no, I don't think you do, ma'am, I'm sorry, but
Okay,
I don't
guys,
like what I just
inappropriate.
felt.
I'm gonna
Thank you,
act-
sir.
I'm gonna cut that one off, okay? All right, thank you. Thank you all for coming. Meeting adjourned at, hearing adjourned at 7:55, and it is adjourned because we do not need to re-meet on it, so. Okay.
Will we still be notified if there's other information on this subject? Just so that-
Absolutely.
Thank
If we
you.
if we have to do another hearing, you can be notified again.
But just look in your newspaper and you'll see.
Is that the little newsletter we get every once in a while? I
No,
don't get the
No,
newspaper.
no, this
No.
is the Granite State News.
Yeah, I don't get
And the town website.
I don't do, we're not on the internet. We're, no. We're-
But you're in a butter, so you would get a certified
Yes.
letter like you got.
Correct, perfect, thank you. Yeah,
Okay.
no, I'm blissfully in the dinosaurs.
And just for educational purposes, had we,
I think so.
had we continued this meeting tonight for some reason, then we don't need to renotice it, because you were here and you heard us say we're gonna continue this meeting for 2 weeks from now. But we adjourned, so we're over.
Because I would have had the notes and I would have
Yeah,
known.
yeah, right.
Correct.
This is over, okay?
Thank you.
Would have been notified just by the speaking of it, but no.
Right,
it's
right,
done.
I would have had known, yes. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Wendy.